Welcome to episode 8 of the Corban Collective Show. I'm your host, Scott Johnson. Now, here at the Corban Collective, we're dedicated to helping Christian men mature and multiply their faith and to grow their leadership. No better time than right now to talk about leading better in our communities, especially when we're having a national discourse. We're talking a lot about racial inequality and what's happening in our nation. So while our society is in a kind of a moment of civil unrest and kind of a holy discontent, I thought no better time than now to bring in some friends to have some conversation. Now, typically you hear me say a lot in these videos, but this week I'm just listening. I'm hearing. I need to learn. I need to gather information from my brothers who are leading in the African American communities. So one of those that you're going to hear from is the Reverend Charlie Thomas, who leads a congregation in Greenville, South Carolina. Another that you're going to hear from is the Reverend Zach Dillard, also a friend of mine who's leading 2 churches in Hartsville, South Carolina. Now, I bring these guys in because I needed to hear from them. I needed to learn from them. And so we decided to record a part of our lengthy conversation and put it up there for everyone else to hear, because I felt like these guys have so much to teach, so much to offer. I needed to sit, I needed to learn. So we're going to share this conversation to try to find a way forward, to lead better by listening. So I invite you to listen in now. We're going to learn together from my friend Charlie and from my friend Zach. So let's jump into this conversation now. With me, Charlie Thomas is with me. And Charlie, you're serving up in Greenville, right? You're at John Wesley United Methodist Church in Greenville?
That's correct, yes.
That's cool. And then also we got Zach. So Zach, you're at St. John's Charge, at St. John's and Wesley Chapel in Hartsville.
That's correct. Yep.
All right, so guys, thank you for joining me. This is a conversation that I'm kind of pulling together. A conversation that I had both you guys, on Saturday, talked a little bit about just life, catching up. I'm glad to call you guys friends, number one, but colleagues as well. In full disclosure, I came out of the Methodist Church. Not a lot of people know that who watch some of our videos, but we're colleagues, but not only just colleagues, but serve together.
Absolutely.
So, now, Charlie, I was trying to think, when you were in the Marion district, is about the time, I guess, our friendship started down in
Brook Green Charge.
Brook Green Charge, yeah. Now, Charlie, tell me a little bit about your service in the church and how long you've been serving, and you and Brenda.
The total years we've been serving now is about 19 years. As you said, we connected when I was in Myrtle Beach at the Brook Green Charge, Brown Chapel, St. James, and Heaven's Gate. And at the time of our forging our relationship, it was a much needed time because my wife was 2 hours away from me. I was going through CPE, getting ready for provisional, and you became a friend when I really needed a friend to do cutaway, to go fishing, to have conversation with. And that was indeed a blessing. I'm so glad that relationship still forged today. At present, I'm at John Wesley United Methodist Church, downtown Greenville. It is one of our historical churches. It is 155 years old. It is one of the, what they call flagship church, which has been in existence for many years, which consists of the parishioners, lots of educators. It's a place where a lot of retired pastors tend to come to be House of Representatives and lawyers. It's a mixture of a combination of parishioners, really interesting group.
So Zach, introduce yourself a little bit and just tell people you and Carrie, you're serving together and let people know a little bit about you and what God's got you doing, man.
Awesome. So I am Zach Dillard. I'm the pastor of St. John and Wesley Chapel Charge here in the Hartsville district, in the Hartsville area. We're starting our 4th year right at the end of June. So I've been in the ministry 7 years total. We got 2 kids. Isaiah is 4 and Eden is 1.5. She'll be 2 here in August. Ministry-wise, man, me and my wife are heavily involved in the church. What we are working through right now, which is exciting, is starting a new health and wellness ministry at St. John. So we're doing got a Blaine Trust grant, and we're working through that, kind of revamping our gym area to turn it into a type of fitness center, and as well as our multi-purpose space, so that we can kind of do some exercising classes and stuff like that. So really trying to be cognizant of the health, both spiritually as well as physically, of our parishioners and the community in which we serve.
Man, I'm excited. I'm really excited to hear when you say the Blaine Trust is something that you've been able to make use of. That's good, man.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
good. Well, guys, we were talking a little bit this week in different conversations with each other about just life. It's not new where we are right now as a society, but it is new challenges in a way, because it's just different. Society is always different. So I wanted to bring you guys in because I wanted to hear from you. What is it like right now as you're leading, as you're leading yourself, leading in your homes? And that's the conversation I really want to kind of dive in with you guys, because you're both fathers. All three of us are fathers. Mm-hmm. But the way and the challenges that we have as fathers is just going to be different. It's just different. And it's different, Charlie. You've got adult sons. As far as Zach, you've got kids as well that are small. But I want to talk about that. I want to just talk about just different life experiences. And Charlie, you and I had a conversation this week, and I said, Charlie, there's conversations that you've had with your sons that would be different than conversations that I might have with Wyatt, my son. And so I just want to talk about that. The fathering as an African-American man, and what does that look like for you, and what challenges have you want to share, from your life, your experience?
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. And certainly I enjoyed that conversation, but it's not a new normal. It is something that has always been with us. Mm-hmm. And the sadness that prevail our society is that I have 3 grown sons and a grandson. And it's sad that I still have to do pep father talk with them along the lines of be safe, watch yourself, because with all of the brutality and all of the senseless murders that have taken place in America alone with the Black male and Black female, it saddens my heart. And so we are in constant conversation with them, what it means to be Black versus when you're pulled over, the do's and don'ts. Make sure your hands are seen. Keep your registration card at a place where you can reach in and tell the officers what you're doing. And for them being millennials, it's really a tough conversation. They see it, they know it, but still yet they don't have altogether that frame of reference of understanding why. Because if I'm driving down the road in my car, why would the cops pull me over? They know why, but the mere fact, it's just beyond one's imagination. Even myself as a 58-year-old Black male, I find myself in unique positions. The other day I was in Walmart and a nice Caucasian female, the line was, we was in the self-checkout, and somehow or another, I was in the right line and she abruptly came in and she looked at me and somewhat smiled and said, "I'm so sorry." And gentlemen, for a fleeting moment, I was frozen in time, 57 years old, whether or not it was okay okay to smile back at her, to say, I said, "You okay?" But I had to really, my mental faculties had to come together as to what I could say to her. And this was just last week, and this is just surrounding everything that's happening. So it's not a new normal, but it's very painstaking, very painstaking.
And just to, for people who may watch this video in the future, and who may be watching this in a different time, when not knowing when this was recorded, we're obviously within the days after of the situation in Minneapolis with George Floyd, just a senseless killing. And so our nation is in a place of hurt right now. So Zach, I just want, I'm always interested to hear your experience. I've enjoyed watching you as a teenager grow up to be the man of God you are right now, and been serving and watching that. But you, all three of us have come through the same ordination.
Mm-hmm.
We've come through the same things, but our experiences are different. I want to hear from you, man. Like, what's in your heart, what's in your mind, and is that experience that I love that we have this generation here too. We got 2.5 generations here on the screen. So Zach, I'm gonna just yield the microphone to you, man.
Yeah, I think Charlie said something that was kind of struck a chord with me. When he's talking about the instance with the lady at the grocery store, right? Is especially since George Floyd, his death, and I've been receiving multiple, text messages and things from my white brothers and sisters, a lot of my friends, really just checking on me and my wife and my family and asking how we're doing. In my response is always measured and calculated, because I'm really not too sure how vulnerable to be, right? So especially as a black man, and we see all of this stuff going on in the world, and all of these protests and everything else, and all of these things are really, to me, an expression of the issue, right? Even the rioting is simply a symptom of a deeper issue. So my response is always, something like, I'm fine, I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, but we're good. I mean, considering, but really we're not good, but at the same time, how do you tell people that we're not good? Because we're supposed to, even with all of this stuff, all of the the protests and everything that are going on, really it demonstrates to the nation and to the world that we're not good. So even to ask like how we're doing, like, do you want me to say like, yeah, like I'm pissed today? I don't feel like, I really don't feel like talking to you right now. So it's just really interesting how calculated I think some of my responses have been to people who look different than I am. And even Charlie was talking about the conversations that he's had to have with his sons, and Carrie and I talk all the time about, the conversations that we're going to have with Isaiah in particular. We're going to have some conversation with him, and we're probably going to have some conversation with our daughter as well. Whenever I'm pulled over by a police officer, I know that I can't call my wife because she may not take it so well. So I'm always intentional. If I get pulled over, I'm always intentional about calling one of my friends. I might call my father-in-law, call my mother-in-law, call somebody, so that the police might not know that they're on the telephone, but it's playing through the Bluetooth speaker, and at least somebody can be aware of what's going on. And that's just the way that I try to protect myself. I may be speeding, and the police officer probably know that I was speeding, and I know that I was speeding. I was caught dead to rights, but even so, that doesn't mean that it should cost a life, right?
Right.
And watching Isaiah loves to play, police and robbers and cops and robbers. And we just play all these games, Paw Patrol. You got Chase, who's who's the police pup, right? And all this stuff. But talking to him about coronavirus, we took him to the barbershop today because that boy's hair was rough, and I was explaining to him. We've been explaining to him why we can't go to stores and why we can't do this and why we can't do that. And this morning I had to explain to him about the mask. You have to put on a mask because there are germs out there that can really hurt us. And we got to protect ourselves whenever we go out into the world right now because of germs, right? So then what do those conversations look like? And that's what I dread more than anything else. Is how do I have these conversations with my 4 or 5 year old child? And right now might not be the time, right? But how do we have these conversations later on down the road when I have to tell my kid, like, no, the police aren't all good. They may look cool and they may look friendly, but some of them aren't good, and some of them may do real damage to us. And those are the conversations that I dread, because we try to keep our kids as innocent as we can, for as long as we can.
I mean, they're hard conversations, and I know we had a conversation offline about when do you have that conversation, and when's the appropriate time? And then there's no right answer to that. It's when it's the right time. You'll know. It's kind of that Kairos time. You know when it's time. You can't chronos it. You can't put it on a clock, but you'll know when it's time. And it's it's the truth. Charlie, as you're leading your sons, you're leading in the community. What does it mean right now, from your perspective? You're leading a church in downtown Greenville. And the same was Zach leading a charge. What's required of you right now as a leader?
For me to be authentic in my calling as pastor, as father, as theologian, as servant leader, to make sure my sermons and my leadership speak to the times, speak to the issues, unapologetically, because those of us that have been called to carry this precious gospel cannot see injustice and not speak to it.
Right.
And so while I realize that there may be parishioners or members in the community who will say, well, wish our pastor would just kind of leave all the politics alone and just preach the gospel. Well, the two work hand in hand. Martin Luther King Jr. said that any religion that professes to be concerned with the soul of man and not with his total well-being is a dead religion waiting only to be buried. And so to embody the totality of what we are about, it is to first of all be true to myself and true to my calling, and that is to stand up and speak against injustice and the wrong that is being done, and to know that truth today will be truth tomorrow, and not to be swayed by the political forces of now is not the time, that is not your issue. We don't want our minister to be attached to this. Just like on Palm Sunday, Pentecost Sunday, I open up my sermon telling my members that I need to be transparent with y'all. this morning, my mind feels like a scrambled egg. I feel like it's all over the place, and y'all pray for me. And simply because with all the things, Scott and Zach, that we had experienced the last 4 or 5 days, it was just horrific, to see the pain, to hear the pain. And so for me, I need to continue to be authentic in that calling, and to know that we as theologians are supposed to speak truth to power.
Now, Zach, I secretly watched your sermon on Sunday. Let me be honest with you, Zach. I watched your sermon while sitting in the parking lot of the police station because I had an opportunity. I got a call on Sunday morning. I'm a chaplain with the police department, and there was an opportunity to kind of, not to make big of what it was, but to kind of be in the gap between a demonstration and the police, and making sure that everything was done peacefully. And so I actually sat in the parking lot of the police station and listened to your Pentecost sermon.
Wow.
And there's two things that shouldn't be lost about that. People, they didn't get to hear what you preached. I did, but it was actually, we talked about the breathe upon me, O breath of God. Mm-hmm. And as we as a city were trying to figure out, and the nation trying to figure out, like, how do we proceed from I can't breathe, and that dichotomy between that, and then trying to figure out how to be a voice of reason and truth. So your sermon helped me Sunday.
Amen.
Praise God.
Amen.
To make sure that I was open and listening, make sure I'm hearing. And so I actually shared with the Joint Task Force prior to them going out into the city and, setting things up in the city, make sure everything was good to go. I had to tell them it was Pentecost Sunday and what that meant and why this Pentecost was different. And so, Charlie, when you say our role as a theologian matters, people think theology is just something people sit in the library and read a book. It's not.
Right.
Zach, your sermon on Sunday, how you feel about it? You really leaned into what Charlie was saying about just being open and honest. And what was that like for you preaching on this Sunday? Was this Sunday different than other Sundays?
Yeah, very much so. And I think that even this coming Sunday is going to be very different from every other Sunday. Because the reality of it is that sooner or later, we have to say enough is enough. I think Charlie kind of hit the nail on the head. When you hear a lot of conversations, a lot of folks saying, politics has no place in the church, right? And money has no place in the church. You don't talk about politics. You don't talk about money. You don't try to tell me who to vote for. Don't try to tell me nothing about nothing, other than Jesus, right? But y'all, even Jesus talked plainly and clearly about politics and about justice and about righteousness and about holiness, both for the individual and for the society, right? And Brother Cornel West wrote a book called The Prophetic Fire. And I've just started reading that. And basically his premise of this book is that the Black church has lost its prophetic voice. It's almost become mute. And rather than being a mute voice for prophecy in the church, we have to begin to realize what exactly God calls us to. So he highlights.
Can I ask you a question? Do you agree with Mr. West about that? Do you feel as if the church has lost its prophetic voice?
I think so. When he's highlighting prophetic voice, he's talking a lot about preaching and speaking out against the injustice that we see in society. And that is where I think that some preachers do a fine job of doing it. And then I think that some preachers are very hesitant for one reason or another to do it. I can't say overall, but I can say that the pastors who I surround myself with are certainly more of the pastors who do have that prophetic fire, because that's personally what I believe God has called us to do, right? We look at society, we look at the Bible, we look at the church, and we say, this is what God desires us to do. We look at the issues of the world, we look at the issues of injustice, the issues of oppression, where however they may present themselves, and we address these issues by saying, thus saith the Lord. Just like I talked about on Sunday, you know, the juxtaposition between, like you said, Scott, the breathe on me, the breath of God, and George Floyd, you know, fighting for his life, you know, for 8 minutes and 40 seconds while the police had his knee on his neck, you know, hollers out, I can't breathe. You know, with the power that the Holy Spirit gives us comes great responsibility. And that means, you know, that God desires to work through us to bring about justice and to bring about righteousness and to bring about wholeness for our individual lives, but also for the communities in which we live and we serve.
Charlie, let me ask you, what's on your heart for this week? What did you tee up on Sunday and Pentecost, and where's the Lord leading you this Sunday, and what do you feel God calling you to speak into this week?
At present, I'm still discerning.
Okay.
Still discerning, still praying. But definitely, as Zach just said, I see it being a continuation of the conversation of what's happening within our society. And if I can just kind of piggyback on what Zach talked about, the prophetic voice and Dr. Cornel West, let me say this. I don't know that a lot of our churches, I don't know that a lot of our pastors really want to identify with the Jesus of Nazareth. Because in identifying with the Jesus of Nazareth, he did not, for the most part, surround himself with the high, mighty, and rich, but he was around the marginalized, the disenfranchised, the lepers, those who were pretty much ostracized from society. And so speaking about, I think for the most part, we want to be prophetic, but we want to be prophetic in the midst of those who we are most comfortable with. But so far as being prophetic with the least of these, the downtrodden, you know, those who are not in mainline America. I don't know, and I'm saying us, I'm saying I don't know that we are altogether comfortable with that.
We like to be prophetic when it's convenient and when it's safe.
Yes. Because those other people don't look like us. They scare us, and I definitely don't want my children to be around their children because it's just not safe. I don't feel safe. And these are the people who are the leaders in the church, along with pastors. And so I'm sorry, go ahead.
So where do we go from here? I mean, always love trying to find a way forward. Where do we go from here?
What I have experienced, again, even with my white brothers and sisters who have been reaching out to us, has been an enormous sense of love and concern from them, right? And I'm grateful for that, because this has happened so many other times when, and you know, their voice, or their concern was silent, right? I mean, it might be there, if you happen to pass them by, they might check on you or something like that. But just in terms of an overflow, that's what, me and Carrie were talking about the other day. Even on social media, there's an overflow of both black and whites, right? Who are outraged and who are talking about this issue that's going on right now, police brutality and extensive force and excessive force and that sort of deal. That hasn't really happened before, to my knowledge. At least not to the extent that it's going on right now. So it gives me great hope in that. But I think even moving forward, I was talking to a buddy of mine, pastor in Charleston, and I was talking to him, and I said, I'm kind of afraid to talk to a lot of white pastors, because I know if I talk to them right now, I would probably ask them what they preached on Sunday and if they talked about George Floyd, right? And if they say no, then odds are I'm going to be livid. You see what I'm saying? And I also think about Dr. Kevin Smalls. I heard him preach one time, and Kevin Smalls said, listen, he said to all the white people, he said, all the white preachers, he said, if you have, any love for me, any respect for me, he said, if when these issues take place in society, if you don't do it for any other reason, at least do it for me. Right? Do it for your black brothers and sisters whom you know and who you care about. Say something. So where do we go from here? That's what I would say, because the black church is talking about it, right? Because it's our lived experience every single day. We've always been talking about it, again, because it's our lived experience. We've got bigger problems, even even in the Methodist church right now, and what's going on with the denomination. But y'all, we're like, listen, like, our problems are like police brutality and like, education and all this other. So we got a whole lot of other problems that we're talking about and that we've been talking about. So it's good then to see people's eyes, I think, opening up. And I would just echo the words of Dr. Smalls and say, listen, like, if for no other reason that you address the issue, then at least do it for me.
Yeah. And I would say, Scott, based on what you asked, where do we go from here? That is the beautiful piece that Dr. Martin Luther King wrote his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Community or Chaos? And in that book, he talks about how we were in search of the beloved community. And as with what Zach said, and I appreciate you, Scott, calling, checking on me. I've had other Caucasian brothers and sisters who have called and checked, text, and it's quite comforting to know that their words were so simple but powerful. How are you? I just want to affirm with you that I love you as a brother. I'm here for you. Let me know. Scott, thank you for calling, praying with me. All of that is so meaningful and so powerful. And again, Zach, I had the opportunity to, after I finished service on Sunday, to just kind of YouTube and look at a couple of our brothers in the denomination, and there was nothing said. There was nothing said. And I said, well, I respect them in their context. Last year, I was in Texas with the Mosaic Conference, and Miles McPherson, former NFL player, wrote a book called The Third Option. The Third Option. And in it, he talks about hope for a radically divided nation. And McPherson is spot on that our nation is divided. And he talked about it from the secular, spiritual, and the racial. So our country is radically divided, but he said there's a third option. And I think he was pointing toward love for our brothers and sisters as we ourselves want to be loved and be treated. Hope for a radically divided nation.
What do you, if you had an open mic, what do you wish you could say?
Yeah. Oh, so I think a couple of things. And I think that, to me, you almost have to address both sides of the coin, right? To both sides of society, I guess, minority versus majority. So to the minority, to the people fighting, I think, for justice and protesting and even rioting, I would simply say, like, I get it. You know, like I'm right there with you. You know, I understand the anger, I understand the frustration, I understand the problem. You know, you got you got a president in the White House who uses, you know, unprecedented force to get over to a church for a photo op. I mean, like things just don't make sense, right? And that's what's so frustrating, I think, is, simply put, things just don't make sense in the world. It doesn't make sense that somebody should die over a counterfeit $20 bill that he may not have even known that it was counterfeit.
Right.
But either way, you know, he shouldn't have lost his life over it. Things don't make sense. I get the anger, I get the frustration. I'm right there with you. And I think that this is something that we're seeing kind of lived out and manifested in real time, because we're all sure, we're all not sure really what to do with it, but we know that we have to do something. And then I would say, to the other side, you know, to the white majority, I would also say, I get it. I mean, I grew up in a white neighborhood, got a white mama, served at Trenham Road High Church, where some of these issues, you know, weren't addressed from the pulpit on a regular basis. Now you can no longer remain silent. If you remain silent, then basically, you know, we remain complacent. So to say nothing on a Sunday morning speaks louder than anything else that you've said all the entire sermon, the entire Sunday. Because then what people hear is that it's not your issue. Right? What people hear is that we don't have to worry about this. Our lives are fine. While the rest of the nation, while all the black people, while all the minority people are upset, this isn't our issue. So we're good. And that type of attitude can no longer be tolerated either. You know, it's kind of the evil of complacency or you know, something of that nature, I guess.
You know, the recent issues has caused me to rewind the tape down memory lane that I really didn't know I still had in my memory bank. And I was about 10, 12, long before your time, Zach. We would go to the doctor's office. There was a white section and a black section. And I recalled going to the doctor's office with Mama arriving about 10 o'clock. And we would have to stay until every white patient had been seen, which means we were there till 3 or 4 o'clock. And I guess if I had the mic, Scott, I would ask, when will this thought process, this behavior of this ideal of privilege, when is that going to die? Privilege meaning by the color of one's skin color. When will that die? How can we destroy privilege from out of our society and look at each other as God's creation? It may never, I may never live to see it in my time, but the best photo op I think we can look at is take a bunch of children, put them on the playground together, black, white, brown, whatever color. And I assure you, they will teach us what no seminary, what no pastoral conference can teach us, is that you want to play with me, I want to play with you, come on, push me. They will show us what real, authentic love is all about. And neither one will look at the other and says, you're dark and I'm red. So I don't know if it makes sense altogether, but, and there are those who live in this privilege, and I'm so glad to see today all the marchers, all those that are marching, that are simply saying, he is my brother, she is my sister. And I believe that this generation is really sincere about eradicating that norm of privilege because of one's skin color. I'm saddened by the fact that those groups who came in with other motives took or has taken away from the true intent of those who were marching peacefully. But yet and still, there's a vast majority of individuals who glory under the banner of privilege.
Mm-hmm. I want to share with you a thought I had started yesterday, and I've been formulating it all day, because I share this just for context only. On Sunday, I prayed with the leaders of a protest, a march. And I just prayed for their safety and make sure that their voice could be heard in a safe way, and just offered a prayer for them. And it did not sit well with a lot of white people. It didn't. I got, and it's no big deal, but people say, they email you, they text you, they write messages, kind of stuff. And one of them had actually, I didn't even use it, the word privilege. It was something someone in my family wrote. But, I stepped into that conversation because I felt like someone had to explain, because they were offended by the word privilege. Offended by it. And so I said, let me be honest with you. I was too at one time. It didn't make sense to me because, I come from a dirt farmer. I've worked hard to get where I'm at in life, if I'm anywhere. Mm-hmm. And then there was a point in time when I had asked this question, why am I offended by a word? I found out it was my problem. I was offended because I didn't understand the word. And so here's a simple little concept. Our whole faith is based on grace. Our whole faith is based upon divine grace. God has done something for me I will never earn, can't buy, can't credit myself. I just have to receive it. It is great. Divine grace is the basic orthodox tenet of Christianity. Every Christian believer has to subscribe to that to get the heart of what Jesus has done. But as soon as I introduce a different word, so if you don't like the word privilege, here's a different concept. I call it secular grace. Things that are afforded to you that you didn't buy, you didn't deserve. It is help from humanity that you yourself did not gain of your own accord. It's just afforded to you. Mm-hmm. It's a secular grace. Mm-hmm. But it's a secular grace that you guys, I have secular graces that you don't. I know that. I understand that. I didn't always understand that. But I had to kind of wrestle through that. But here's the paradox. As Christians, we're okay with divine grace, but to acknowledge that there might be grace from the secular world, that I'm getting the benefit of the doubt at a traffic stop. I get the benefit. I ran through this city this morning at 4:30 without fear or weapon.
Wow.
In neighborhoods that you could not.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. That's secular grace.
Right.
you could call it privilege, but actually if you go to Merriam-Webster and look at the word grace definition, I think number 3 says privilege.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of times people a word may be offensive. But what about this? What if there is a secular grace that some people have that other people don't? And so for me, that's kind of how I look at it. I know it to be true. I know it to be the true in the denomination.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are churches that if I was still in the denomination, that I had we went to the same school, took on the same debt, took on the same everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But there were places I could have served and had pay structures to pay back the same debt, same education loans, everything else that you want.
Mm-hmm.
But as a denomination, we don't talk about it.
Right.
Well, the white church doesn't talk about it.
That's right. Yeah.
Because I know it's talked about. Let me just say it this way. The white part of the denomination doesn't talk about it. But that's just my perspective. I don't have a right to say much. I'm just trying to illuminate where I can. I appreciate you guys. I love you.
Yeah.
Well, and Scott, I just wanted to say real quick, because I think you hit the nail on the head, though, when you talk about social grace, right? And even to throw the word privilege back into play for a second, because, right, I think if we were to talk about athletes, right, if we were to talk about athletics, then some white folk would look at me and see that I'm a black man and assume that I'm phenomenal at basketball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because all black people are great at basketball, especially black men. But y'all, I suck at basketball. I'm horrible. So it's like these inherent things that we see in society that we're okay with saying is a privilege or is just the way that they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there are things that we also struggle with, which is just this vast dichotomy of society.
Yeah. And can I just say this one thing right quickly?
Yeah.
I was in the Sumter Mall 20 years ago, and there was a clown that was blowing up balloons. And I just stood there and watched because the kids were in line. And I heard the clown said, "This is the last one." And it was a little white kid there with his mom. And up comes a black mother with her baby, and the clown said, that's it. The little black kid starts to cry profusely. I mean just sobbing. The little white kid goes over to the black kid and gives him his balloon, the last balloon, because I did a sermon on it. And the mother snatches him by the arm and said, "What did you do that for?" He said, "Mom, he is smaller than me," and he was crying. And I didn't want him to cry anymore. Gentlemen, that was love at its best. But yet the child exemplified, but mama said, "Why did you do that?" Goes back to that word privilege. Why did you do that? Or not being gracious to one's neighbor. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Guys, I appreciate you sharing some time. And like I told you earlier this week, I said, I have a platform to share conversation, and I felt this was an appropriate time. I'd love to have you back on. We talk about anything. We talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I hope next time that we on this phone call, the world's at a better place. And we can talk about anything we want. But for now, we'll just press into whatever we need to talk about. So I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Appreciate your work, man.
Yeah, man.
All right, man. You guys have a blessed day. Call me if you need anything for you.
All right. Love you guys. Love you
Love
guys.
y'all.
Appreciate
Take care.
it. Thank you, man. All right. God bless.